Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Up at the in-laws place today, gonna work on what we call the rusty bucket. We got the golf cart from a friend, bought new batteries for it in the beginning of the season, and it just didn't seem to work. They were frustrated with it. They offered it to us free. The caveat was that if I could get it running, that I would throw a few bucks towards the batteries. Up here at my in-laws, they have about 10 acres. They have a lot of wildlife cameras. They love their flowers. They love their bird seeds, their bird feeders. They use the golf cart to basically maintain the property. They've never had one before. We thought it would be a good idea for them to have it as they're getting older. My father-in-law just recently got a hip replacement. So, as he's recovering, he's been using this thing to get around the property. They told me that they fill up every little watering can that they have and they stick them on the back of the golf cart and drive around and use those cans to water everything. I thought it would be pretty cool to get a tank for them that they can fill up and use, and then it would be powered off of the golf cart itself. We got an 8-gallon tank, wire up the tank and the pump. It's a 36 volt golf cart. I have to install an inverter to drop down the voltage to a 12 volt so that the pump doesn't burn up from the 36 volt. It's a fun golf cart. They never thought they'd actually want one or need one, but now that they have it, they absolutely love it. It's in rough shape. There's rust all over the place, but it gets the job done for now. And, I think we're just going to keep it as long as the batteries will survive and talk about upgrading in the future. Here's the product. It's a iron tin tank. Let's see what we got here. So it comes with a hose, instruction manual. It comes with a switch that I know of from the listing. And here's a wand, spray wand. And then here's the actual tank. Nothing too crazy. I don't want to overburden that thing with a large tank. So this is a 8-gallon tank. Pump comes pre-installed. There's a fill tube down there with a little screen. It has a fusible power link. Comes with a handy wiring harness, some hose clamps, alligator clips to hook directly to the battery. I don't think I'm going to do it this way. I want it to be a little more permanent than just these. I don't want to have them lift the seat up every time they want to use this and connect the battery. So pretty cool little unit. So that's the kit. I brought my tools up to the pool today so I could do the job around here. For today, my plan is to just hook up the inverter. That inverter steps the voltage down from 36 to 12. It makes it safe for the golf cart batteries so that they're being used evenly. Again, this is our rusty bucket, so it's not going to be any fancy custom install. The kit comes with a switch so that you can isolate the pump and shut it off when you're not using it, so it's not draining the batteries while not in use. So I'm taking the fully wired up inverter that I just bench wired, and I'm adding ring terminals here so that I can hook it up to the positive and negative battery terminals. I'm using ring terminals that already have shrink tubing pre-installed. So this is the last wire for the inverter. I'm going to unscrew the battery terminal nut so I can put the eyelet over top, and right around here, yep. I have no idea what I just did, and it took me a minute to overcome the shock, literally, and I'm just sort of contemplating my life. Yep, I have no idea what I just did. I figured this would be a good time to read the directions, and yep, it says it right there. If you wire everything up backwards, you're going to cause a big shock and pretty much burn out the inverter. So basically, after blowing up the inverter, I decided to take the opportunity to make myself some jumper cables with the wire that I had left over. I wanted to bench test the pump and see what sort of pressure we would get on a 12-volt source. I'm pretty bummed with what I did. I'm a little beside myself for the rest of the afternoon. I decided to go fill up the tank, and I'd take a cruise up to the house to just grab some water quick. Jump out, turn the water on, go and get the hose, and I decided I needed a screwdriver out of the garage, so walked over to the toolbox, grabbed a screwdriver, came back, and yep, realized I didn't put the cap on the tank, so now it's just leaking everywhere. Feeling completely defeated, I decided to drive back, go get the cap, and
put the cap back on, and it does its job. So one thing went right today, and I head back to the house for the second time and continue filling up with water. Put about half a tank in, head on back to the Jeep where I'm just going to use that 12-volt source out of the Jeep and be as immature as possible. On to the next day.
Smells like failure and disappointment.
So on to day two, I pick up right where I left off. I had an inverter shipped overnight from Amazon. I decided to tie it into the wires that I installed the day before. At this point, I'm just zip tying the inverter to a spare unused bracket underneath the seat, just trying to get the power out and safely routed back to the tank.
Okay, so this inverter went in pretty seamlessly, no issues this time. Who knew reading the directions would actually be so helpful? So here I'm going to move on to figuring out what I'm going to do with the tank. And the entire time I decided that it would fit with no issues between those two fenders. And right around here, I go get the tank and bring it in. And in a quick test fit, I realized that it almost fit, but you'll see here that the drain cap on that right fender right there, and then I decide maybe I could shift it to the left, but then I would really lose access to the cap to drain it. Now this isn't going to work, right? So I thought maybe off to the left fender, then I thought maybe on the right fender. Clearly neither one of those options was a good one. And at this point I realized the solution was staring right at my face. I decided to mount it right to that rear bumper. And from here on out, the job seemed to go perfectly. The yellow straps my father-in-law had sitting in his garage for probably about 10 years were just waiting for their moment to shine. They just had a simple cinch fitting on the one end where you could just pull and it would never release the strap. And underneath that bumper, I had two bolts that perfectly lined up with the embossed sections of the tank. And I was able to wrap right around that tank and hook right onto the bumper support. And everything seemed to line up perfectly. Taking a couple zip ties just to mount the wand holders to the vertical supports on the roof. Moving on to wire management, and I'm going to mount that switch right to the lower horizontal section of the roof. A couple more zip ties just to hold the wire, keep it secure, and just routing the wire underneath that fender. Just trying to find a clean path back to that tank and the pump. And once I get back there, just clean up the excess wire, loop it all together and zip tie it to the pump just to keep it secure. And that's it. Here we go. You got the tank mounted to that shelf / bumper, hoses in the back. Everything is zip tied and secure. No wires will be dangling anywhere. I have the switch mounted to the back of that seat. The wand is mounted to that vertical post to the roof. And you'll see the inverter under the seat is zip tied to a bracket under the seat, and I have the wires coming out from the behind the seat cushion up that vertical post and back to the pump. And here we go. We got the legend coming out to make the inaugural test. This was a real fun project for the family this weekend. We had a lot of willing participants, a couple cameos. We had a lot of fun making this video. Hopefully this helps them up at the house. I hope they get a lot of use out of it. Always trying to find ways to make their lives easier. If this helped you out or you just like watching the build, do me a favor, hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel get found. Drop a comment, tell me what you'd have done different or what you want to see next. If you want to stick around for more, hit subscribe. Appreciate you guys being here and see you in the next one.